Imagine standing in your socks on this cold, scuffed-up tile floor.
Oh, yeah. The absolute worst.
Right. And you're clutching this flimsy, quart-sized, clear plastic bag.
Filled with those tiny, ridiculously overpriced bottles of shampoo.
Exactly. And there's a line of just really impatient strangers breathing down your neck. A conveyor belt is aggressively pulling your personal belongings into this dark humming machine.
And you're just standing there completely vulnerable.
Totally. And you are desperately trying to remember how to ask a uniformed official in a language you are literally still learning if you're about to be detained for carrying a bottle of water.
It's terrifying, honestly.
It really is. That visceral, high-stakes panic is the reality of learning how to speak English for the airport.
Yeah, and when you look closely at the vocabulary we teach people for this specific environment.
Which is what we're doing today.
Right, it stops looking like a simple language lesson and starts looking like, well, an incredibly intense psychological survival guide.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating linguistic ecosystem because when you strip away the romance of international travel.
The glamour.
Exactly, the glamour. The actual phrases a learner is taught to memorize are overwhelmingly focused on navigating intense physical limitations.
Preempting suspicion, managing this constant underlying current of time pressure. It's intense.
Which is exactly why we are taking a completely different approach today.
Yeah.
So welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you, the learner.
We're so glad you're here with us.
Yeah, because we know you aren't here for just surface-level summaries. You want the mechanics, the hidden patterns.
Those sudden aha moments that make you see the world differently.
Exactly. So today, our source material is a transcript from a YouTube channel called Learncast English.
It's a great resource, by the way.
It is. And we're looking at an episode of theirs titled Learn English at the Airport, Episode 10. Now, on its surface, this is just a standard ESL lesson for beginners.
Very straightforward.
Right. But our mission today is to look at the very specific vocabulary provided in this lesson and use it as a blueprint of the entire modern travel experience.
We are going to examine the power dynamics encoded in the grammar itself, because the language we are taught to use in any given environment reveals the true nature of that environment, you know?
Totally. Like, what is prioritized?
Right. Who holds the power? What are the assumed anxieties?
And when you analyze airport English specifically, the answers to those questions are surprisingly raw.
They really are. And there's this structural detail right at the beginning of this Learncast English episode that completely reframes the entire lesson.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, before the instructor even introduces the airport vocabulary, they do a quick review of the previous lesson, which was episode 9.
Yeah.
And episode 9 was entirely about communicating at the post office.
Yes. The transition is seamless, but just so profound when you think about it.
It really is. The instructor reminds the listener that yesterday they practiced phrases for sending packages, inquiring about express mail, asking things like, how much is it to send this package?
And then immediately after reviewing how to process a cardboard box, the instructor basically says, okay, today we'll move on to the airport.
Right. So yesterday the learner was taught how to mail a box, and today
they are being taught how to mail themselves across the globe.
That post office analogy, I mean, it works so well because it perfectly maps onto the logistical reality of air travel.
It really does. You're just cargo.
Exactly. A traveler is essentially a biological package. You are processing a physical object yourself and your heavy belongings through a complex sorting, scanning, and delivery mechanism.
You are subject to weight limits.
You are subject to security scans, and you are subject to strict routing procedures.
You are weighed, you're tagged, you're tracked. And what's crazy is the teaching method itself reflects the mechanical nature of this whole process.
Oh, the audio prompts.
Yeah. The Learncast instructor uses this very distinct pedagogical rhythm throughout the entire video. They introduce a scenario, They provide the target phrase, and then they say 1, 2, 3, say, followed by a 3-second pause for the learner to repeat it out loud.
Right, and the instructor explicitly states that the goal of this repetition is so learner will speak naturally and feel at ease.
Which, sure, practice makes perfect.
Right, but if we look at the cognitive science behind learning a language in a high-stress environment, that 1, 2, 3, say method is doing something much more crucial. It is managing cognitive load.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Well,
Because when I am stressed out, like, say, running late for a flight,
oh, it's the worst.
my brain just dumps everything I know out the window. My working memory feels like it just drops to zero.
Yeah, and that is a well-documented physiological response. In a high-anxiety situation, your brain's executive function is completely compromised.
Wow.
So if you are standing at a crowded counter, sweating, worried about your flight, and trying to consciously construct a grammatically correct sentence in a new language from scratch,
Like conjugating verbs in your head.
exactly, remembering prepositions, all of that, you might just completely freeze. So the 1, 2, 3, say method attempts to bypass the need for spontaneous sentence construction entirely.
So it's like, instead of building a house brick by brick while someone is yelling at you, you are just dropping a prefabricated house onto the lot.
That is a fantastic way to visualize it. It embeds the entire phrase into your brain as a single accessible unit.
You don't even have to think about it.
Right, you don't have to think about the grammar of the sentence, you just deploy the phonetic sequence. It basically creates a linguistic reflex.
A reflex, wow.
Yeah.
And the very first place the learner has to deploy these new reflexes is at the check-in desk.
The first hurdle.
Yeah, this is the moment we transition from the theory of taking a trip into the physical reality of the infrastructure. The source text immediately drops the learner into these high-stakes environments.
Major international hubs, right?
Yeah, London, New York, Paris, Dubai. But what really stands out to me is what is completely missing from these introductory phrases.
You are referring to the lack of aspirational language.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is zero excitement.
Yep.
Like, you are going to Paris, but the lesson doesn't teach you to say, I am so excited for my vacation.
Not at all.
The primary focus of these early phrases is entirely on limitations and the fear of penalties. The very first interaction you have as a traveler is fundamentally an audit of your physical belongings.
And what's fascinating here is if you consider the specific grammar the learner must memorize, the phrases are completely centered around boundaries.
Right.
They are taught to ask, how many pieces of luggage am I allowed to check in? And could you please weigh my bag to make sure it's under the weight limit?
Under the weight limit.
Yeah.
You walk through the automatic doors of the terminal, and the immediate imperative is to prove you are not taking up too much space in the world.
Precisely. The language explicitly prepares the learner for an interrogation of their possessions.
It's so stressful.
It reveals a universal travel anxiety, which is the fear of exceeding the baggage allowance. Look at the directness of the follow-up phrases in the lesson.
Okay, lay them on me.
They learn to say, is there a charge for extra luggage if I go over the weight limit? And how much do I have to pay if my bag exceeds the baggage allowance?
Wow.
The learner is preemptively bracing to be fined.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit. Is it really an interrogation, or is it just the airline doing basic math?
I didn't mean...
Well, an airplane has a maximum takeoff weight, right?
Yeah.
They literally have to know how heavy the bags are, or the plane won't fly. So are we projecting too much anxiety onto what is essentially a physics problem?
That's a fair point, and the physics are undeniable. But the linguistics of how the traveler is taught to navigate those physics tell a different story.
Okay, I'm listening.
If it were purely a math problem, the interaction would be entirely passive on the traveler's end. You know, you place the bag on the scale, the machine reads the number, done.
Right.
But the learner is taught to actively ask for permission and to use conditional phrasing regarding financial penalties.
Oh, I see.
The anxiety isn't about the physics. The anxiety is about the financial and social friction of being the person who breaks the rules.
That makes total sense. It is the public shame of having to open your suitcase on the floor and move a pair of shoes into your backpack while the line behind you just collectively sighs.
Exactly.
And speaking of that backpack, the anxiety doesn't stop with the large bags going under the plane. It extends to the things you're desperately trying to keep close to your body.
The carry-ons.
Right. The source has the learner practice, asking, I have a carry-on bag, but I'm not sure if it's the right size. Can you check it for me?
Notice the shift in agency there. You are appealing directly to the authority of the gatekeepers to validate your choices.
Yeah, you're asking the airline agent to define reality for you.
And it gets incredibly granular. They learn to ask, can I take 2 carry-on bags or is it just one?
You are essentially asking, how much of my own property am I legally permitted to hold on to? But there is another layer to this check-in audit. It isn't just about the physical space your sweaters take up. It is about your legal right to exist at the destination.
The documentation.
Yes, the source text includes this crucial phrase. Do I need to show any other documents such as a visa before I check in?
That phrase completely encapsulates the dual nature of this initial contact point because check-in is a physical audit of your mass and it is a legal audit of your identity.
Right.
You are handing over your passport, your visa, and your bags. You are basically stating, here is who I am and here is what I own. Am I permitted to enter the system?
And if you don't have that visa, the weight of your bag is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
You are rejected from the system immediately. Check-in is the ultimate gatekeeper stage.
Absolutely.
And woven into all of this heavy gatekeeping language are these highly specific logistical questions that reveal how desperate the traveler is for certainty.
Because the airport is an environment designed to strip away your control over your own schedule.
Exactly. So you have the traveler asking, I'm flying to Paris tomorrow morning. Can I check in early? They just want to offload the burden, both the physical bags and the psychological dread of the audit, as soon as possible.
Just get it over with.
Right. And then you have the constant nervous time management checks. Like, can you confirm if my flight is on time?
Yes, the learner has to master this phrase because they are now entirely at the mercy of the airline's machinery and the weather.
They have to constantly ask authority figures to confirm that reality hasn't shifted.
They are continuously gathering data to manage their own expectations. The text even has them ask, I'm flying from Dubai to London, how long is the flight?
Which is interesting, right?
Yeah, because they aren't really asking for the physics of the aircraft, they are trying to mentally map the duration of the ordeal ahead of them so they can pace their endurance.
And the check-in section wraps up with this little mini role play. The agent says, may I have your passport and ticket, please? And the learner is taught to reply with a simple, here they are.
It is pure compliance.
Handing over the documents, submitting to the check. And once that suitcase rolls away down the conveyor belt, the audit shifts. You are no longer defending what you packed. You are defending what you are wearing.
The transition from the check-in desk to the security checkpoint is arguably the most dramatic psychological shift in the entire travel experience.
It's huge.
The language reflects a move from transactional consumerism to intense procedural compliance.
When you are listening to this, you might just hear standard instructions. Take off your shoes. But think about the context of learning these phrases.
Right.
The meticulous physical unburdening required here, it's just exhausting. The learner has to memorize, I need to take my laptop out of my bag before going through security, right? And are there any liquids in my carry-on that I need to remove?
It is a constant vocalized questioning of what parts of your life need to be separated from your physical person.
It becomes deeply bodily. The learner asks, do I need to take off my shoes when I go through the security check?
Yeah.
And do I need to remove my belt and watch before going through the scanner?
You are literally learning how to ask for instructions on dismantling your outfit in a highly public, highly stressful space.
I want to look really closely at one specific phrase the text provides here because I think it is the most vulnerable sentence in the entire lesson.
Which one?
Can you help me with the security process? This is my first time traveling.
Wow. Yeah, that explicit admission of naivety is incredibly powerful in this setting.
It is. Like, put yourself in the shoes of an adult learner, maybe a 45-year-old business person traveling internationally for the first time,
Right.
having to look at a uniformed guard and essentially say, I do not know the rules, please guide me. You are completely throwing yourself on the mercy of the state security apparatus.
And that highlights the core linguistic shift. At the check-in desk, even while being audited, you are still technically a customer. You can negotiate.
Sure.
But at the security checkpoint, you have no agency. The language you use is entirely submissive.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here again.
Oh, for it.
Are we interpreting a basic safety protocol as submissive just because it's annoying? Like, if I walk into a hospital and they tell me to put on a mask, I'm not being submissive, I'm just participating in a public health measure.
That's a good comparison.
Isn't taking off a belt just a mechanical necessity to stop a metal detector from beeping rather than some profound stripping of agency?
It is a mechanical necessity, absolutely. But let's look at the grammar the learner is forced to use to navigate that necessity.
Okay.
The text teaches them to ask, I'm not sure if I have any prohibited items in my bag. Can you check it for me?
Oof, yeah.
That is not the language of a neutral safety protocol. That is a preemptive confession of ignorance and a request for absolution. The learner is taught to articulate the fear that they might be accidentally breaking the law.
Please search my things so I don't accidentally become a criminal. Yes, when you phrase it that way, the anxiety is palpable. You are asking for an intervention before you face consequences. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. It's like a pop quiz you haven't studied for. And look at the technological paranoia embedded in another key phrase. How can I make sure that my bag isn't flagged by the security scanners?
Flagged. That is such a specific, ominous word.
It really is.
You are asking how to follow the law. You are asking how to avoid the machine's suspicion. You want the cheat code to bypass the algorithmic eye of the scanner.
Because being flagged means being pulled aside, having a stranger rifle through your underwear in public, and potentially missing your flight.
It requires the language learner to grasp a highly conditional, often contradictory logic. Security isn't just a list of bad items. It is a complex web of if-then scenarios based on material, volume, and geography.
The water logic, oh my gosh, this section of the text is a masterclass in absurdity.
It's so confusing.
The instructor has the learner practice the phrase, can I keep my liquids in a small bag or do they need to be in a clear plastic bag?
So the threat is not just the liquid itself, but the opacity of the container holding the liquid. The learner has to articulate the material science of their packing strategy.
And it culminates in this incredible, highly conditional question. Is it allowed to bring a large bottle of water through security if it's purchased after the checkpoint?
Let's break down the mechanics of that sentence because it's wild.
Mm.
Is it allowed, passive voice, deferring to an unseen authority,
Right.
if it's purchased after the checkpoint, introducing a spatial and temporal condition?
It's a logic puzzle.
The learner is having to vocalize the understanding that a bottle of water is a dangerous threat on the west side of a metal detector, but that exact same bottle of water is a safe, necessary source of hydration on the east side of the metal detector.
Provided it was purchased from an approved vendor.
Exactly.
You are learning the rules of a highly specific, localized reality. It's like a video game, where an item is only safe if you buy it from the merchant inside the castle walls.
That's exactly what it feels like.
And the learner has to navigate all of this abstract logic while simultaneously managing the physical clock. Like, how much time should I leave before my flight to get through security?
Time shifts from an abstract schedule to a deeply personal biological countdown.
Right.
It is no longer just when does the plane leave? It is How long will it physically take my specific body to clear this obstacle course?
And because humans naturally look for a way to optimize their suffering, the source text also prepares the learner to look for the VIP exit.
Yes.
I've heard that some airports have faster security lines. Is there a priority line here?
Even while we are all walking around in our socks, we're desperately trying to find out if our credit card status can buy us a shortcut through the humiliation.
It is the persistent hope for an exemption from the friction, but ultimately, you have to pass through.
You always do.
You repack the laptop, you thread your belt back through its loops, and you step away from the scanners.
Yeah.
And the moment you do, the psychological environment drastically shifts again.
You leave the zone of active interrogation and you enter the liminal space. The text labels this section boarding and the gate area.
You are basically in purgatory.
Right.
Exactly. You have proven you aren't a threat, but you aren't allowed to leave the building and you can't get on the plane yet. You are just suspended.
And the transition in the vocabulary reflects that suspension perfectly. Having shed the immediate anxiety of prohibited items, the traveler's language turns almost instantly to orientation.
Finding an anchor.
Right. The very first phrase they practice in this new section is, "Where is gate number 22 for my flight to Tokyo?"
Because airports are deliberately disorienting.
They are.
They are massive, curving structures filled with flashing screens and identical stores. The learner has to immediately find an anchor point. Where is the physical door I must eventually walk through?
And once they establish their physical anchor, they attempt to establish a temporal anchor. How early do I need to arrive at the gate before the boarding time?
That's a good one.
They're trying to figure out how long their leash is, how much time do they have to exist in this liminal space before they must report for the next phase.
Which brings up a phrase that absolutely fascinated me because it captures the pure psychological fear of missing out the FOMO that really defines the gate area.
What's the phrase?
The learner is taught to ask, can I leave my gate area and still be able to board the plane when it's time?
Let's look at the possessive nature of that phrasing. My gate area.
Yes.
The traveler has claimed a temporary psychological ownership over a small patch of carpet and a few metal chairs.
And they are terrified to break the invisible tether.
Yeah.
Like you want to go buy a magazine or get a coffee, but there is this primal fear that if you break eye contact with the desk agent, the plane will quietly detach from the building and leave without you.
It's irrational, but so real.
You are literally asking for permission to wonder.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to walk away or am I required to stand guard?
It is the anxiety of missing the invisible cue, which is why the text also provides an auditory safety net.
Oh, the announcements.
Yes. The learner asks, will there be an announcement for my flight before boarding? They are seeking a guarantee from the system. Please promise me you will loudly call my name before you leave me behind.
Please don't sneak away. And of course, the great equalizer of the gate area rears its head. The delay.
The inevitable delay.
The text prepares the learner for the inevitable breaking of the contract. Can you tell me how long the delay is for flight A1-123 to Los Angeles? You are stuck at the gate, and your only recourse is to ask authorities how long your punishment will last. How can I find out if my flight is delayed or on time?
But interspersed with this anxiety of waiting is a sudden, sharp return to the language of status and consumerism.
Oh, yeah.
After the humbling experience of the security line, the traveler often seeks to reassert their agency through commerce.
We see that so vividly in the text. The source teaches phrases like, where can I find the lounge for first-class passengers? And is there a special line for priority boarding?
And the ultimate attempt to purchase comfort at the final hour.
Can I upgrade my seat to business class at the gate?
That is a desperate Hail Mary pass. You are standing right next to the boarding bridge. You are looking down the barrel of a 10-hour flight in a middle seat. And the physical reality of that confinement is finally dawning on you.
It hits you all at once.
You are trying to throw money at the agent, to change your physical destiny before you cross the threshold onto the aircraft.
It highlights how air travel forces individuals into stark class divides, and the ESL student needs the vocabulary to either navigate their assigned class or attempt to purchase their way out of it.
The gate section also covers what I call the microcrises. These are highly specific, seemingly small issues that can cause a complete psychological meltdown when you are running on empty.
Like what?
For instance, the lost document panic strikes again. The text includes, "I've misplaced my boarding pass. Can you help me print another one?"
The boarding pass at the gate is the ultimate golden ticket.
It really is. Realizing you don't have it while the final boarding call is happening is a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
The learner must have the reflexive language to articulate that panic politely and demand an immediate solution from the staff.
And then there is the negotiation of final items. You are about to scan your ticket, and you have these last-minute doubts about what you are holding.
Right.
Is it okay if I bring my duty-free shopping bag on board?
Yeah.
You bought an oversized Toblerone past security, and now you are suddenly paranoid that it violates some unseen boarding protocol.
Which leads us to the eternal, highly ambiguous debate of the travel pillow.
Oh my gosh, yes.
The Looncast source explicitly has the student practice, "Can I carry my travel pillow onto the plane, or does it need to be checked?"
The travel pillow, I love that this made it into a beginner's language lesson.
Yeah.
Because what even is a travel pillow?
It's hard to define.
It isn't a bag. It doesn't hold anything. It's just a strange foam horseshoe that you wear around your neck like a medical device. You genuinely don't know if the airline categorizes it as a personal item, a piece of luggage, or an article of clothing. The grammar of the sentence forces a binary carry it on, or check it onto an object that defies categorization.
It perfectly encapsulates the granular, rule-bound anxiety of the boarding process.
Truly.
But eventually, the boarding pass is scanned. The mini roleplay in the text has the agent say, "Excuse me, may I see your boarding pass?" The traveler complies with, "Sure, here it is," and the agent provides the final directive, "Thank you, your gate is over to the left."
And that directive sends you down the jet bridge. You leave the vast, echoing terminal, you step over the metal threshold, and the environment compresses drastically.
The walls close in.
We are moving into the section the text calls "in the air," talking to the flight attendant.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the environmental shift here completely rewrites the rules of engagement and the required vocabulary. You are transitioning into a highly controlled, incredibly confined space.
You go from an international hub where you can literally walk for miles to a seat that is, 17 inches wide?
Barely enough room to breathe.
And if you look closely at the language the source teaches for this segment, the queries are no longer about logistics. You aren't asking about gates or security rules or weight limits anymore.
No, the language becomes profoundly bodily and surprisingly intimate.
Because the traveler's physical environment dictates their language entirely at this point. You are stripped of the ability to regulate your own physical comfort, so you must rely on a designated proxy.
A total stranger in a uniform.
Right. The requests start out simple enough, like, "Can I get a glass of water, please?" But they quickly escalate into negotiations of core physical needs. "Can I have a blanket and a pillow? It's getting a bit chilly."
Think about the helplessness encoded in that request. You are unable to change the temperature of the room you are trapped in.
You can't just adjust the thermostat.
No, and you cannot walk to a closet to get a jacket. You must use your second language to articulate your internal sensation of coldness and request physical insulation from the flight attendant.
And it isn't just temperature. It is the physical space itself. The learner practices, "I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Could I change seats if possible?"
Look at the phrasing there, "if possible."
Right. It's a heavily conditioned request. It really highlights the power dynamic.
It does.
Imagine the level of physical distress required to actually press the call button, summon an attendant, and ask to be relocated. Your body is fundamentally rejecting the geometry of the space assigned to it, But you still have to frame the request as a polite hypothetical. If possible, may I relieve my physical suffering?
You must advocate for your body within the strict, immovable hierarchy of the cabin.
That's a great way to put it.
And the same absolute dependence applies to sustenance. You cannot forage for food. The learner is taught to ask, "Do you have any snacks or a meal for the passengers on this flight?" And more specifically, "Can you bring me a vegetarian meal, please?"
You are handing over your dietary needs to the airline's catering logic. But the most striking phrases in this section are the ones that deal with actual medical distress.
Oh, absolutely.
These are the most vulnerable sentences in the entire curriculum.
"I don't feel well. Could you bring me some medicine or a cup of tea?"
Analyzing that sentence is crucial. The ESL student is learning that speaking English on an airplane involves admitting sheer physical fragility.
Yes.
They must have the vocabulary to seek palliative care at 30,000 feet.
And I find the pairing of medicine or a cup of tea fascinating. It is a desperate shotgun approach to comfort.
It really is.
Please give me pharmaceuticals. Or, failing that, warm water with leaves in it. Just bring me something that signifies care.
Just do something.
Right. There's another one. "Can I get a pillow for my neck? It's getting sore." You are explicitly complaining about musculoskeletal pain to an airline employee and asking them to intervene.
But while the body is entirely vulnerable and dependent, the mind is still actively trying to manage anxiety by mapping the situation.
It's always mapping. The focus of the anxiety just shifts from the terminal to the trajectory of the aircraft.
Right. You can't ask the gate agent, "Is my flight delayed?" anymore, because you are physically inside the machine. So the questions become about endurance. How long until we arrive at our destination, and what time do we land at the airport?
And notice the highly specific, almost tactical question the text provides. How long before we begin our descent into the airport?
Okay, why do they need to know about the descent specifically? Why not just ask when they land?
Because the descent is the moment the physical reality of the flight begins to shift. It is when the air pressure changes in the cabin, it is when the engines change pitch, and it is when the seatbelt sign comes back on.
Oh, wow.
The traveler wants to know exactly when their environment will undergo a transition so they can mentally brace for it.
Speaking of seatbelts, let me challenge you on a phrase that really stuck out to me here.
Sure.
The text has the learner practice. Can you show me how to use the seatbelt properly? In our outline, we noted this as a profound admission of vulnerability. But honestly, is it? Airplanes have unique buckle mechanisms. Isn't this just a learner wanting to make sure they understood the safety briefing rather than some deep ego death?
It can certainly be practical, but consider the context of an adult learner. In almost every other aspect of adult life, asking another adult how to operate a simple mechanical restraint, a metal flap and a strap, carries a social stigma of incompetence.
That's very true.
To utter this phrase in a second language requires prioritizing your physical safety over the potential embarrassment of appearing foolish. It speaks to the unique environment of the aircraft where the rules of gravity are suspended and the passenger must submit entirely to the authority of the crew to ensure their survival.
You set aside your pride because the stakes are literally life and death.
Exactly.
And amidst all this physical discomfort and existential vulnerability, the text also reveals a desperate need for psychological escape.
The plea for the digital pacifier.
Exactly. If your body is trapped, you need a way to eject your mind from the situation. The source text teaches, are there any entertainment options on the flight? Could I have some headphones to listen to the in-flight movies? And the most critical modern survival question.
Is there Wi-Fi available on the flight?
Yes. The traveler's asking for the infrastructure to pretend they are not sitting in that specific chair.
They seek a connection to the external world or immersion in fiction to mitigate the reality of the cabin.
Please give me the internet so I can dissociate until the wheels touch down.
And eventually they do.
The descent finishes, the plane hits the tarmac, the engines roar in reverse. You survive the flight. But as we move into the final segment of the LearnCast transcript, it becomes abundantly clear that the journey is absolutely not over.
No, the cycle of anxiety doesn't end. It simply resets at the destination. The physical relief of landing is instantly replaced by a brand new set of logistical hurdles.
We arrive at the section labeled Arriving at Your Destination, Collecting Luggage. If the check-in desk was about rules, and security was about submission, and the airplane was about bodily vulnerability,
Right.
this final arrival stage is entirely defined by the language of troubleshooting.
It is the vocabulary of anticipating failure.
You step off the plane, and your very first thought is a reunion. You have to locate the heavy boxes you surrendered hours ago. The source text starts with orientation. Where can I pick up my checked luggage? And I'm looking for the baggage claim area. Is it this way?
And immediately, the anxiety of time, which haunted the gate area, returns in full force.
Yeah, you're just standing there.
The learner practices, how long does it usually take for the luggage to arrive at the carousel?
Think about the physical act of waiting at baggage claim. You are standing next to a moving rubber belt, staring blankly at a hole in the wall with rubber flaps, and you are just praying that your possessions emerge.
It's agonizing.
It is a high-stress waiting game over which you have absolutely zero control. How can I know when my luggage has arrived at the carousel?
But the ESL lesson doesn't just prepare the learner for a successful reunion, it extensively prepares them for the dark side of baggage claim.
When things go wrong,
The scenarios where the system fails.
the text teaches the grim vocabulary of loss and damage. The learner must memorize, do I need to report a lost bag to the airline or the baggage claim office?
Let's look at the mechanics of that specific question. The learner is trying to navigate competing bureaucracies.
Yes.
They have suffered a loss, and now they must correctly identify which corporate entity holds jurisdiction over their grievance.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Yeah.
You are jet-lagged, you don't have your clothes, and you're trying to figure out which desk to complain to in English.
And it gets more forensic.
Like what?
How do I check if my luggage has been damaged during the flight? You are learning how to inquire about inspecting your belongings for trauma caused by the unseen machinery of the airport.
Wow. The text also covers proactive protection. I have a fragile item in my bag. Should I report it to someone before collecting it? The traveler is trying to preemptively intervene before the baggage handlers throw their suitcase onto the belt.
And if it's not a checked bag that goes missing, it might be something you dropped. The text prepares the traveler to ask, where can I find lost and found at the airport?
But there is one specific scenario included in this troubleshooting section that represents the absolute nightmare of international travel.
The critical failure of identity.
Yes. The phrase is, I think I've lost my passport. Where should I go to report it?
The inclusion of I think is a fascinating linguistic cushion.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Why I think? Why not just say, I lost my passport?
Because the reality of losing the singular document that proves your legal right to exist in a foreign country is too catastrophic to state as an absolute fact immediately.
It's too scary to say out loud.
Exactly. I think I've lost it. Softens the blow. It leaves room for the desperate hope that it might still be in a jacket pocket. Teaching an ESL student, this phrase is essential, but it is heavy. It is the vocabulary of a full-blown existential crisis.
It is panic distilled into 12 words. You have lost the key to the kingdom. But amidst all this crisis management, there's a structural anomaly in the source material that really caught my eye.
Oh.
It is a phrase that, at first glance, seems to be completely in the wrong section of the video.
Which phrase is that?
Deep in the arrival section, right after they talk about lost passports and baggage claim, the text has the learner practice saying, can I check in my luggage right at the airport if I didn't do so online?
Ah. The misplaced check-in question.
Why is a check-in question at the very end of the journey? You just landed. You were standing at baggage claim looking for the exit. Why are you suddenly asking about checking a bag in?
Well, on a purely practical production level, it might just be a stray phrase that the creators of the LearnCast video accidentally grouped into the final section.
Sure, an editing mistake.
However, if we continue to view this curriculum as a psychological blueprint, that misplaced phrase highlights a profound reality of both language learning and travel.
Which is the reality of nonlinear chaos.
Precisely. Conversational realities are rarely chronological. A traveler might be arriving from one flight, retrieving their bags, and immediately departing on a domestic connection on a completely separate ticket.
Oh, like a self-transfer.
Right. This would require them to shift abruptly from arrival mode back to check-in mode right there in the terminal.
Or they're asking a hypothetical question to prepare for their flight home next week. Language doesn't always follow a neat narrative arc from A to B.
It doesn't.
As an English learner, you have to be prepared to pull any tool out of your vocabulary toolkit at any given moment, regardless of where you physically are in the airport.
The ecosystem is too complex for strict linearity, and the text definitely covers those complex transition realities. For example, it includes the phrase, "Do I need to clear customs if I'm just transiting through the airport?"
The purgatory of the transit passenger. You are physically in the country, breathing the air, but legally, you have not entered the borders.
It's a weird limbo.
You need the vocabulary to ask an official if you must officially enter, just to immediately leave again.
And it covers the final logistical hurdles of fully re-entering the actual world. Even at the exit doors, there are fees to navigate. Is there an additional fee for handling oversized luggage? And is there a special line for people with fragile items or extra luggage?
It even covers living cargo. The text teaches the phrase, "Can I bring my pet with me if I've declared it in advance?"
The complexity of international transit extends to animals, requiring the learner to master the vocabulary of advanced declaration and specific retrieval procedures.
And the anxiety of the audit persists to the very last second.
Oh, you mean the duty-free?
The duty-free. The anxiety about those giant chocolate bars never ends. In the arrival section, the learner asks, "Can I carry my duty-free purchases in my carry-on bag?"
They're still worried about it.
They survive the initial security check with them, they survive the confinement of the flight with them, and now they are terrified that customs is going to confiscate them right before the exit sliding doors open.
It is a relentless need to confirm compliance with authority.
But eventually, assuming everything goes well, you get the bags, you find the pet, you clear customs, your duty-free is safe.
You're almost there.
Now you have to figure out how to actually escape the gravitational pull of the airport. The final stretch of phrases in the LearnCast transcript is entirely focused on extraction.
Locating the physical conduits that lead back to the civilian world.
First, you might need a temporary reprieve from your belongings. The text offers, "Can I store my luggage at the airport for a few hours?" But ultimately, you need a vehicle.
You have to leave.
The learner practices, "I need a taxi to get to my hotel. Where can I find one?" And, "Is there a shuttle bus service to the city center?"
You are seeking the specific transportation infrastructure that will carry you away from this highly regulated zone.
And then the very last phrases offer the most basic, foundational attempt to orient oneself in a brand new reality. Where is the nearest information desk? And are there any maps available at the airport?
The ultimate tool for spatial awareness.
You have traversed the globe, you have navigated the metal detectors and the bureaucracies, and now you just need a physical piece of paper to tell you where on earth you are standing.
It's wild when you think about it.
It is a remarkable journey, encoded entirely in a few dozen functional questions designed for an ESL student.
It truly is.
So what does this all mean? Let's zoom out and look at the whole map. We started this deep dive with a seemingly simple premise, analyzing a beginner's language lesson on YouTube, LearnCast English Episode 10.
Right?
But by deconstructing the specific grammar, the phrasing, and the underlying anxieties of these sentences, We haven't just reviewed a vocabulary list. We have mapped the entire psychological arc of modern air travel.
The narrative arc is intense and uncompromising.
We tracked it from the moment you walk in. We started at the check-in desk, where the language forces the learner to grapple with the anxiety of physical limits, weight restrictions, and the burden of proving their legal identity.
And from there, we move to the security checkpoint, where the vocabulary shifts from transactional negotiation to strict bodily submission. The learner must articulate highly conditional logic just to ensure their belongings aren't flagged as a threat by the machinery.
Then we entered the liminal purgatory of the gate area. The language shifted to spatial orientation, intense time management, and the desperate status-driven search for comfort to ward off the psychological fear of missing the flight.
Then we boarded the aircraft, entering a zone of profound airborne vulnerability. The language became intimately tied to physical survival and discomfort, asking uniformed strangers for water, medicine, blankets, and instructions on how to secure a seatbelt while suspended in the atmosphere.
And finally, the descent into arrival. The physical relief of landing, instantly undercut by the language of troubleshooting. The vocabulary of lost bags, damaged items, navigating transit customs, and finally seeking the exit to re-enter the civilian world.
And for you, the learner listening to this deep dive, this highlights a fundamental truth about acquiring knowledge. Memorizing a list of phrases is useless if you don't understand the environment those phrases were built for.
Context is everything.
These sentences aren't just dry grammatical exercises. They are vital tools for self-advocacy.
They are the linguistic levers you pull to survive the system.
By understanding the hidden power dynamics, the submissive framing of security questions, the conditional requests for physical comfort on the plane, you aren't just becoming better at English, you are becoming a more capable, more resilient traveler.
You understand the why behind the what.
Which drastically reduces the cognitive load when you actually find yourself standing in that chaotic terminal.
You stop reacting to the airport, and you start navigating it. And as we wrap up this deep dive today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Something to chew on the next time you hear someone struggling to practice a new language, or the next time you find yourself staring at the flight departure board.
What is the thought?
We just spent the last hour meticulously breaking down how this specific foundational set of English vocabulary is constructed almost entirely around strict rules, bodily discomforts, the fear of financial penalties, and submissive interrogations.
Right.
The language of survival in a highly regulated, mildly hostile environment.
It is certainly not the language of poetry or connection.
Right. So if an English learner's primary introduction to utilizing the language in the real world involves navigating this intensely stressful, gate-kept gauntlet, how does that context shape their initial emotional relationship with the English language itself?
Oh,
When their first real-world sentences are, check my bag, search my body, and please bring me medicine, are they learning that English is a tool for human connection? Or are they deeply internalizing that English is fundamentally the language of compliance?
that is a staggering question about the deep psychology of language acquisition. The environment absolutely shapes the emotion attached to the words.
Think back to the post office analogy we started with. Yesterday they mailed a cardboard box. Today they learned how to mail themselves.
Yeah.
It requires a tremendous amount of vulnerability to put yourself in the mail, especially when you have to ask for permission in a language that isn't your own. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love taking these journeys with you, unpacking the invisible layers and the hidden architecture in the everyday things we learn.
We really appreciate you taking the time to explore this with us.
Keep looking for the hidden blueprints, and we will catch you on the next one.